Girlfriends, welcome to the Girl Talk podcast. We are excited to be with you today. We have a special podcast here where we're talking about adoption. I've got Nikki and Jamie here to share some personal experience with you. Grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and enjoy. Nikki, why don't you open us up? We know you've been in adoption. You've currently adopted a child. How in the world did you get started with adoption?
Okay, so the story is pretty cool. I don't know if either of you actually really know the background, but it started early on in our marriage. I wanted to adopt. I just knew from the time I was a kid, actually, I knew some families who at our church who adopted, and I always thought that is the coolest thing. Like, I just thought adoption was so cool. Wow. So early on in our marriage, we really hadn't talked about it before marriage, and then I would just keep bringing it up. Like, we had 3 of our own healthy biological kids at this time. So I would start kind of like putting it in my husband's ear. And his response was always, we have 3 healthy kids, great kids. Why would you want to do that? Sure. Like we don't know what we're going to bring in, what it's going to do to our family. And he really wasn't into it. Like it just wasn't something that he had a desire for. And I did. Yeah. So I would just like randomly put it in his ear. Just keep like, well, it was just really, I just knew I really wanted to adopt. So finally, the Lord was working on my heart, and I was like, I got to quit nagging him, because this has to be something, your spouse has to be 100% in when you do something like this, and It can't just be me pushing. So I'll never forget, we were on a vacation in the car, our 3 kids behind us. I'm talking adoption to him again, and he just wasn't there. So I said, okay, I'm going to stop talking about this to you. I told him it out loud. I said, but mark my words, God will change your heart. And I left it there.
You just had that burning desire inside.
I just left it, but I knew I needed to shut up for a minute. It had to be a God thing, because it just wasn't on his heart like it was mine. So fast forward about 3 years after that, he went on a missions trip with our church, and he goes on this missions trip, comes home, and almost one of the first things he said to me was, I think we need to start fostering. And I was like, fostering? My thing, I could never give a kid back. Like adoption is what I'm wanting to do. I wanted to keep a kid, not give it back. Like, so that wasn't even on my radar. And I was like, I could never do that. There's no way I get too attached to kids. That was my reason. Like, I could never do that. But at the same time, I knew God had done something on his heart, so I had to move fast. Like, I was like, I got it before he changes his mind. I'm going to start seeking out fostering, because this is a God thing. Like, if you knew my husband, he's not like, he is who he is. Like, he's not going to do something because I want him to. It's going to be because it's his idea. Or God told him to do it. And he'll flat out say God told him to do that. Like, he knew this was God. So, but it wasn't adoption yet. It was fostering. So when I started looking at all the foster requirements and paperwork that was involved, it was daunting. And I was like, I'm the most impatient person in the world, and I've been waiting for this moment for God to start moving. I'm like, I can't wait this long. Like, this is crazy. So I started making phone calls to ministries in the local area to see if there was anything I could do to help kids. Like, can we start bringing them in somehow? And I came across Baptist Children's Home in Valparaiso, Indiana, right here. And I called them, and they had a ministry where you voluntarily brought kids into your home. And it wasn't through the state. It wasn't foster care. And it wasn't adoption either, because I had to do what my husband was telling me, what he was feeling like God was moving him to. So what this was volunteer foster care. So it was a short amount of paperwork. You could be licensed within a month. The mom voluntarily calls in. She's in a crisis situation. She could be homeless or in drug rehab. It could be anything, just a crisis situation. She literally doesn't have anybody. So this is her last resort. She's calling the Baptist Children's Home, asking them, do you have a family that could take my child or children for a temporary amount of time so I could get back on my feet so the state doesn't take them away? And so the whole goal is for you just to care and love that kid so she's getting the help she needs by herself. And then reunification. Always, almost always, unless it's, child services has to get involved very rarely, but it's a pretty big success rate for the program. So I brought that before my husband, told him I found this. He's like, go for it. Like, let's do this. So we did it. And in a matter of a few years, we brought in 15 kids in our home through that. So I would say that was 2014.
How were you feeling in this? Because you said that you were, how could I ever hand it back?
Oh, this is a good thing to add, guys. This is good because I am not the only one who says I can't foster because I can't give them back. I have heard that so many times from people. Like, I get too attached to the kid. Mm-hmm. And I cannot tell you the grace that God gave us in those moments. Matter of fact, some of the kids are so bad you can't wait for them to go back.
Oh, wow.
It's like, wow, time's up. Is the mom ready? Wow. But some of them, I mean, you just love them so much as your own. And really, you go into it, you got to change your mindset.
Okay.
I learned the hard way. I thought that I could not give them back because I love them so much. But I realized how selfish that really was of me because it was all eyes on me and not paying attention to the kid's need. It wasn't about me. I mean, it wasn't about the kid. It was about me because I couldn't give them back. And I'm like, the kid is going to be homeless and I'm saying I can't take you because I can't give you back. Well, that's so wrong. And I'm not bashing anybody, but because that was me.
Right.
But it's just something I learned. Like, you got to get over that reason and just look at it like, I am going to love that kid and give them a safe, loving home. God has blessed us above and beyond. We have a safe home and they can come in and we can give them the love of Christ and bring them to church with us and love them while they're there. And the goal is for them to go home. Wow. You know, and you just change your mindset and just, this is what God gives us. And then the other neat thing with those 15 kids too, we have pictures of them now. We have, I have a whole list of every single one of their names so we never forget them and we pray for them. So those kids might not ever have somebody to even pray for them their whole life until they came into our home. And now they'll be prayed for throughout the year.
So what age is this?
Okay, so it can go from newborn. It's usually not teenagers through this program specifically. Homes of Compassion is what it's called. It's ran through Baptist Children's Home right now. Okay. But it is usually the younger, I would say maybe 0 to 10 would be your average, but more on the younger end of that.
And what's the average time you had a child? I'm sure
the average time turned out to be about 2 months per child.
Wow.
I had a couple kids that were there for 24 hours. I have had a kid there for a week. Our first placement was a newborn, and I had him till he was 6 months old. He was my longest placement. And even with him, I was his mom, and he was like ours. And I knew at the time when they gave him back to his mom, it was time. Mm-hmm. Like, God just washed me over with peace. Mm-hmm. Like, because that was probably our hardest one to give back. And, but yeah.
Do you see the parents at all, or like?
Yeah. So the neat thing through this situation is they do have your number and you have the mom's number, and so she can keep in touch with the kid. I could text her during the day. Hey, he wanted to say hi. He can call her or she. But at the same time, Homes of Compassion is with the mom, helping her, guiding her, getting her the resources. So they're really keeping in touch with her.
Wow.
But she can have visits on the week. Like if she has a free, like we could meet at a central location and she could see her child if she wants while I have the child. Mm-hmm. So it's an open type of thing. It's really hopeful. It's really awesome ministry. So, so we brought in 15 kids through there. And then my husband, towards the end of the 15th placement ish, he was like, yeah, maybe we should adopt.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, this is going to be gravy because we've had 15 kids. We're used to bringing in all my kids are used to giving up everything. They're just used to change. This is normal for us at this point. It was going to be easy. And so I thought it was going to be easy. So we decided to adopt through the foster system. So that's completely separate from Homes of Compassion. Through Baptist Children's Home. We decided to get licensed through the foster system, and we were going to adopt through the foster system.
How long does it take to get licensed through that?
Okay, so through the foster system, it varies. So it took us a good 6 solid months to get licensed because you have to take a lot of classes. But the problem is they only offer the classes on certain days and certain times. Well, when you have jobs and you're both going to different churches, you and your husband or spouse or wife, whatever, you have to, but you can do it single too. Even if you're single, you can adopt through foster care and do homes of compassion.
Wow.
But when you're married, we had to coordinate our schedules, get babysitters for the kids, whatever. And so you have to catch those classes when they offer it. So it took us 6 months because you just got to, but you can do it quicker. And the paperwork is a lot. Like, it is a pile of paperwork and it's so daunting.
Wow.
But I just had a mission. I'm like, I'm doing this. And I would just work on it whenever I could. And it took us 6 months and we were finally licensed to adopt.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you just wait?
So there's a website and it's called Indiana Adopt Us Kids.
Okay.
You can go on there, anybody can, and it's an open website and you can click a photo list, a state photo list, whatever state you live in the United States. We're in Indiana, so you would go to Indiana Adopt Us Kids, click on your state photo list and they will show you a picture. I was actually looking at it this morning just to refresh my mind. There's about 10 pages of kids currently just in Indiana. I think I counted 160 kids right now up for adoption in Indiana. So what we were talking about the numbers earlier. Currently in the United States, there's over 400,000 kids in foster care. And probably close to, I just don't want to throw out random numbers, but I know it's in the hundreds of thousands kids who need adopted.
Wow.
Through foster care. So what I started doing was you get licensed and you get permission to look at these kids' files. So anybody who's not licensed can go on Indiana Adopt Us Kids and they can just see a picture. Mm-hmm. But because once you get licensed, you can click on that picture if you're interested, send your information, say, I want the file on that kid. And so I would just keep researching. I got licensed. I started researching through that Indiana Adopt Us Kids website. I kept looking for kids. What would be a good fit? We had certain, like boundaries, like the certain things that we couldn't bring into our house because we still had young kids at home. Well, young teenage kids. And then I think my son was like 11 years old. And so I would just research that and I would send the file. It's like a 10-page file that you get on this child. And it's everything they know about the child, everything the state knows about the child. And I would send it to my husband, tell him to read it. What are his thoughts? And so we found this little girl on there and I was interested. She sounded like she would be a good fit for our family. He agreed. So how it works is you send your basically your resume of your family in that they have on file. They read it, but at the same time, there could be 5 other families inquiring about that same kid. Mm-hmm. So they have to weed people out and be like, nah, we don't think this would be a good fit. And if you're a good fit, they call you back and say, we want you to come in for an interview. So we got the call back. Nobody was interested, actually. There was no other inquiries at the time. And we went in and they said, she has a sister too, but they can't be adopted together, but you can choose which one you want. And it was really interesting. And because of I can't share, it's too private for my daughter to share the information, but because of finding out all the information, we did choose the one we chose. We chose the one we actually inquired about. We chose her over her younger sister. And so it's just a messy situation. It's a sad situation. And that's the process basically of adopting through foster care. Wow. That's how it runs.
Such a need. Such a need. Another thing people don't realize, most people that I talk to, is adopting through foster care is free, which is huge. Adoptions are $30,000 or more. So when you adopt through foster care, when I say free, I think we had a receipt for $300, $350, and that was for background checks and maybe fingerprints. Well, a lot of people don't realize also that your place of employment a lot of times covers a portion for adoptions. Well, my husband's place of employment covered up to $5,000 for an adoption. Wow. So when I got my $350 bill, they covered it. So yeah, which is huge. But a lot of people really, adopting through foster care is scarier because most people want a baby.
or a younger child, and you're not typically going to get a baby through foster care or a young child. I mean, you can, it happens, but typically these kids on the state photo list are ages 8 and up. So it's just scarier for people when you're taking in an older one. And then going back to saying how I thought it was going to be real easy, when we told them our max age for adoption would be an 8-year-old, because my son was 10 at the time, or maybe 11. Okay. But we thought we wanted to keep it under his age. My youngest son was 10 or 11. And so we said 8 was going to be the cutoff. Well, when we ended up getting our daughter, when she got moved into our house when she was 9, 3 months from turning 10, because she said 8 on her profile, but by the time the whole process went through, she had turned 9.
Wow.
And so it's just funny how God works, because we had our max age, and then he was like, this is the one still. Like, it was at the very top of our age range, because we were leaning towards younger. And then she was 9 by the time the adoption was final. It took probably a year and a half for the adoption to be final, which she was living with us that whole time. And so then by that time she was 11. By the time, something like that, like a year and a half. Yeah, she was 11 by the time the adoption was final. Wow. And it's not easy adopting an older child. We found out, like, all the homes of compassion children that we had brought in were probably, the oldest we ever had was a 9-year-old actually, but that was only for a week. And all the other ones were like 5 and under. So we hadn't dealt with really an older child bringing in like that. And it turned our lives upside down for a little bit.
Do you have help through the foster care after you even fully adopt a child?
Yes. Okay. So like counseling services, they offer continually till they're 18, maybe even a little older. So when you adopt through foster care, the child is already on Medicaid. So these are just interesting facts for people to know. They're on Medicaid because they're state owned. And when you adopt them, you have an option to put them on they're your child, but the state does offer you the option to keep them on Medicaid till they're 18, or to put them on your own insurance. So a lot of people, I just talked to somebody who was adopting through foster care, and that was a huge help for them, because financially, even though the adoption doesn't cost anything, to know that their medical is 100% covered till they're 18, that's huge. Yes. And honestly, our adopted child has been to the doctor more than any other child that I've ever had. Wow. Like, she breaks things, or I don't know what allergy issues. We're at the doctor all the time. So it really helps. It's a big there is a big benefit to adopting through foster care. They really do help with those services. It's messy. You're going to get angry with them. The state is a messy thing to deal with, but it's not, it's about the kid. You just keep your mind on the goal.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I have so many questions, but I'm going to wrap up this first episode here. Is there anything else, Jamie? Do you want to add anything to that? All right, ladies, stick around, because next week we're going to be dropping the second part of this. We're going to hear about Jamie's adoption and some follow-up questions that I have for Nikki. So stay tuned for next week.
Hey friends, thank you for taking the time to listen to the Girl Talk podcast, where women encourage women. Come join us also on Instagram and Facebook, where we encourage women to live an intentional, powerful, positive, and spirit-filled life.